Okay, so when it comes to support, we talk about support for a claim, that's one of those things where there's sort of a continuum. There are some facts, some claims have no support whatsoever. That just happens sometimes. There are things people believe, things people want you to believe, that actually don't have any evidence supporting them whatsoever. So you'd call that an unsupported claim. But many claims have a little bit of support, some have a bit more, and so on up to so much. There's kind of a point where a claim has so much support, you might as well just say it's proved. My personal rule for saying something's proved is if I'm going to go on and I'm going to act like it's true, you know, stop worrying about whether it's proved or not and just accept it as true, then that's proved. And that's supposed to come when there's a lot of evidence. The evidence, there's no evidence hidden, there's no evidence that's inaccessible, all the evidence supports the claim, there's no evidence against it, there's no good argument against the claim. And there are claims that I would believe are proved. Evolution through natural selection is proved scientifically. Anthropogenic global warming is proved scientifically, although almost nobody outside of science believes in it. That kind of still proved, according to scientists, the relevant scientists. The other claims I consider proved, well, I consider quantum mechanics proved, and I consider general relativity proved, which makes a problem because they don't quite agree with each other, so they're both kind of proved. Did you know that? Relativity and quantum mechanics don't quite agree. There's various ways of fudging to make them together. That's one of the big things in physics now, is trying to get those two to agree. So stuff can be proved, and you have to make up your own mind about what you personally consider proved and what you personally don't consider proved. There's you know, when you're making up your own mind, a rational person makes up their mind on the basis of evidence, but that doesn't mean that every rational person thinks the same thing. Right? Reasonable people can disagree, rational people can disagree, so it's perfectly possible for me to think something's proved and you to rationally think that it's not proved. And we're both being rational, because we're not perfect, and the evidence isn't perfect, and logic isn't perfectly understood, and particularly complicated things. So we're trying to make, and that's another reason why I focus on weak arguments, arguments that are clearly weak, so that we can have stuff where we agree that it's wrong. All right. So a claim can be in one of three positions. It could be proved, unproven, which is a different thing, and disproved. And the definitions for this is roughly proved, overwhelming evidence for it. Disproved, over evidence against it. So if there's overwhelming evidence against a certain claim, then we'd say it's disproved. If we judge that there's overwhelming evidence in support of a particular claim, then we say it's proved. Something's unproven, it hasn't been proved, it hasn't been disproved, you don't have overwhelming evidence either way. So there's three endpoints here. Now, we can have a hypothetical, completely rational person. All right, if someone was absolutely, completely rational, they'd only believe things that were proved, they'd disbelieve things that were disproved, and they would have their minds open on unproven stuff. They would neither believe nor disbelieve unproven stuff. Now it's important, of course, to remember that you have the absolute right to believe whatever you want to believe. And someone who's trying to bully you or push you into believing something that you don't want to believe, they're kind of in the wrong. Right? I make a distinction between people who are defending their beliefs and people who are attacking other beliefs. Have you ever had someone come up and just sort of out of nowhere start an argument about religion or politics or something? Yeah, someone gets into your face and they want to try and change your mind. You know, if you don't want to talk to them, if you don't want to listen to them, you don't have to. Nobody has a right to your attention. You say, dude, leave me alone. I have a saying that when people ask me about my religion, I tell them I'm an atheist, but I say I construe this that as I am whatever religion is under attack at the moment. If somebody's attacking someone else's religion, I want to help defend the religion that's under attack. I don't want to help the attacker. Because I think it's important that people get to believe what they want to believe, what they freely choose to believe. That's actually, I think it's a moral value. Also, it's irritating when I see people attacking other people's beliefs. Right? So, you know, if you didn't start the conversation, you don't have to participate in it. They don't have a right. And if you can't answer their arguments, that doesn't matter. You get to believe what you want to believe, and no one has the right to force you to believe anything like that. I think that that's very. Let's see. So I was going to say something about this, and so I want to talk about what happens when arguments fail. Actually, I don't need a question mark. Right? Right. If So if a claim is supported by a bad argument, right? Sometimes people give bad arguments for things that they want you to believe. Showing that the argument is bad just shows the claim is unproven, or at least it's unsupported by that argument. does not disprove the claim. Knocking down an argument doesn't disprove its conclusion. It just shows that the argument doesn't disprove the claim. If you or I are having a discussion, if we're arguing about something in a calm and rational manner, and you give an argument for your side, and I show that your argument is no good, I have not proved you wrong about your conclusion. I'll have shown an argument is bad, and I've shown that the argument that you just gave does not support the conclusion. But I haven't proved the conclusion false. I need to do more than knock down your argument. I have to come up with arguments of my own. So do you get that? That if an argument's bad, it's the claim is just. If there's no good arguments for something and no good arguments against it, it's unproven. It's not proven false. If there's no argument for it, that doesn't mean it's proven false. It has to have at least one good argument against it to prove it false. So I want to emphasize now a difference between what I call with critical thinking versus defensive thinking. And I'm using the word defensive thinking. I've got this cartoon in the text that I got from somewhere else, and it compares the scientific method to the creationist method. And that's a judgment, a claim that's made about creationists, that they do what I'm calling defensive thinking. And this claim that's represented by the cartoon may or may not be true. But the defensive thinking thing, I think, is true. Now, I think I've said this before. When I was a kid, I thought that everybody made up their minds the same way. They'd look around, look at the facts, see what was the best explanation, most reasonable explanation for those facts, and then believe whatever was implied by the facts. And God, was I stupid, because that's not the way most people think, at least in my experience. In my experience, there are a lot of people who start with what they want to believe, and they look around for facts or for evidence or things they can say to make it come out to be true. And I've had a number of conversations with people like that. After a while, I realized that have you ever had this happen? After a while, you realize the person you're talking to is never going to be willing to be convinced, because they see it sort of as a game, that their goal is to defend their conclusion, and they're trying to think up stuff to deflect away what you're saying, and logic doesn't matter. Evidence doesn't matter. It's all about supporting what they believe. And I had a very sort of frightening experience at another college. I was doing this critical thinking class, or logic class, and they required me to have a textbook, which is bad because there are no good textbooks for this class. That's why I had to write my own, because it's the only good one. Well, at least in my opinion. But my boss there had written a textbook, He'd written a textbook, a guide, critical thinking or something like that, a guide to piloting your own mind. And I thought, all right, yeah, he's a smart guy, he's written a good book, I'll use it. Should have read it more carefully before I assigned it. Oh yes. So we come to the part on how to write papers, and I'm reading this. I think I'd read this like a couple of days before the class. Because this is what happened. It says, here's how to write a critical thinking paper, a logical critical thinking paper. It says, right, say that your topic is paddling. Now, paddling is apparently paddling by daycare workers, daycare, like preschool. You drop the kid off at preschool, there are these people that teach you to finger paint and throw things around, and I don't know what they do. Put blocks on top of other blocks. And it says, okay, in some preschools they allow paddling, which is if a kid's misbehaving, give a swat on the bottom. And I'm going, okay, so that's the thing. This is the assigned topic. And then in the text it says, and say you're against it. And my reaction reading this was, no, don't say that. Don't say that at all. Look at the evidence first, then make up your mind. And it gets worse. So it's okay, you're against paddling. Look around for evidence to support your conclusion. What's wrong with that? Well, he's not telling them to look around at all the evidence, because that's what you should do. If you're a critical thinker, if you're being honest, you look at all the evidence. So then the book goes on. Well, say you don't find evidence supporting your conclusion. Well, if you don't find evidence supporting your conclusion, what should you do? Really? As a rational person, you should change your mind. I can't find evidence to support my conclusion? Well, that means my conclusion is unsupported and I should not be telling people it's true. So it says, okay, so you can't find evidence supporting your conclusion. Make something up. Make up a story in which paddling causes harm and put that in your paper. So this professor, who I had thought was very smart, was telling students to lie. Make up a story. Look, imagine this. Imagine somebody, little Jimmy, he sets fire to little Susie and kicks several people in the knees, breaking their legs, and you know, he's going around cutting people with a razor. And the daycare worker swats him on the bottom, and it makes him into a serial killer, because he was perfectly fine before. Yeah, well, I know, I made that up. That wasn't in the book. But you know, you make something up where the thing you don't like has bad consequences, and you put this in there, and that's supposed to persuade. And that's not critical thinking. That's the opposite of critical thinking. That's fantasizing. So he was actually instructing students to be dishonest, to reason from the conclusion to the evidence, and not think about what the actual evidence actually implied. So, and if you remember, right, my thing about the open carry laws, what if I'd written papers like that? Oh, okay, I'm going to say the open carry laws are a bad idea. I'll look around for evidence that there'll be mass shootings and, you know, all kinds of horrible things happening because, oh, there isn't any evidence. Okay, I'll make something up. Right, a story of a father who's picking up his kid from school and I don't know, he has a gun and this kid gets it out and shoots 13 people. Oh, I don't know what would happen. Or he decides to impress the kids by juggling guns. And they all fall on the ground at once and kill 82 people. Right? I can make up stuff. I'm good at making stuff up, and it can be really scary too. But I don't. I don't. Anyway, so there's the two kinds of thinking. Is the critical thinking where you look at evidence and go to a conclusion, and the defensive thinking where you have a conclusion, well, not you, obviously, but someone has a conclusion and they write whatever they can think of to make that conclusion look like it's true, whether it's supported by evidence or not. So So, and I often do see this in papers, or at least what looks to be like this, that there's someone has a conclusion. I've had this weird experiences with students with every so often, it's like 1 in 200 as a sort of the radar. I have someone who says, well, I already chose this thesis and I can't change my mind. I'm like, you can't change your mind? Of course you can change it. No, because of the point of view I chose, I have to stick with this thesis. All right. Okay, so any questions? No questions whatsoever. Was this like all so clear that it was really boring?
Well, I mean, it helped because you pretty much covered everything that we already read online from your book.
Okay, so yeah, I can't.
It was just review.
That's the, well, hopefully that's the way it will always be. Because if I, and I've done this, if I give you reading and then you come in and I start lecturing on something different, that means I screwed up. I did that once, and the students were looking at me like, and I stopped and I go, didn't you have reading on this? And they're like, no. Well, why didn't you say something when I put up the quiz? So they'd already taken a quiz on this and no one had gotten it because no one had done the reading I thought they had. All right, I'm going to turn it off.